So let's say that your child has phonological dyslexia and you want to know how to help your child to read well if they have phonological dyslexia. Now, there's some really key things you need to know, and this is very different from what the other parents whose children don't have phonological dyslexia are going to be needing to do. So for you parents who your child has phonological dyslexia, you need to be aware of some things. Firstly, it is much, much harder for a child with phonological dyslexia to do well at school and with reading and writing than it is for someone who just has visual stress, what we would call visual dyslexia or Erlen syndrome. It's much harder for your child, and you need to be more patient with your child than those other parents do, because for the other parents, they just put a few things in place and suddenly things are easier, whereas for your child, it's a tough road that they're on. So let's look at what you specifically need to know for helping your child. Number one is, wherever possible, give your child as much extra time as you can. Your child takes longer to process written text than their friends at school do. So your child always needs more time. Really important that you're requesting more time from your child's teacher for all assessments, and that's a reasonable request. Also, use that at home. Don't ask your child to do something in a short period of time. Give them as much time as they need, because writing for them and reading for them, it's just not going to happen quickly. If they do try to read or write quickly, then it's either their written work's not going to make sense, or what they're reading is going to be difficult for them to comprehend. Give them more time, give them extra time. No matter what other people tell you, don't do that. You just need to be assertive there and require more time for your child. Now, let's start right with, kindergarten reading, and we'll move all the way up through in this short chat we're having now, because if you understand what works at the beginning, it helps you later on. For a little kid, brand new to reading, it's so important that they know what sounds letters make, and especially lowercase letters, because kids normally see lowercase letters, not uppercase letters. So you always want to be working with lowercase letters. So things like knowing that S says S, or C says K, or D says D, that's important. So what you want is for your child to look at the letter S and not say the letter S. You want your child to look at the letter S and know that that means S. Okay, and that's difficult for a child with phonological dyslexia. They take a lot longer to process that. They take a lot longer to learn that, but that's step one. Now, once your child knows what sounds the alphabet is making, then they're ready to start actually reading three-letter words. Now, you want three-letter words that are consonant, vowel, consonant words. Okay, words like cat, hat, sit, hit, bat, consonant, vowel, consonant, because those words will almost always say exactly the right sounds that match their letters. So say the word mat, M-A-T. Well, you want your child at the next level to be able to go a-t, a-t, and to gradually say it more quickly, at, mat, 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 mat. The word's mat. Okay, so you want your child to be getting in that zone. Now, quite often they need you to help them way more than you ever needed help from your parents, and that's because you didn't have phonological dyslexia. So you learn it really quickly, whereas your child's going to take quite a while. They're going to be quite slow to learn this sometimes, and that's just how it is, and we as parents just need to accept that. That's okay, and go with it. So going back, the first thing that your child needed to learn was the individual letter sounds, what sounds each individual letter makes. The second thing your child needed to learn is how to put those sounds together so you've got consonant, vowel, consonant words, those three-letter words. And then the next level after that is to be able to look again at those three-letter words, those consonant, vowel, consonant words, and to be able to do the rhyming of them. So instead of just reading the word mat, to be able to know, oh, that's mat, oh, that's hat, that's cat, that's fat. To be able to learn that, you can actually pull bits and pieces of words apart and put them back together again, and it does make logical sense. So say with the word mat, if you take the C off and replace it with an F, then you end up with the word fat, f-at-t, fat. And that there is the foundation. It's such a foundation for helping kids who have phonological dyslexia to actually learn to read, because they're learning in that one activity how to pull words apart and then how to put them back together. And that is one of the key areas that kids struggle in when they have phonological dyslexia. And kids at school they're not always taught that enough because it's assumed that your child has already learnt that, but sometimes your child hasn't. And so that is such a key skill. I'd highly recommend using word cards for stuff like that. And, you know, you can do things like get a couple of different word cards, like say hat, hop, sit, and sun. Sun as in what's in the sky. And to get your child to go, okay, so which of these words start with the S sound? Notice I didn't say start with the S sound. Start with the S sound. So you're getting your child to sort of play around with words, to be talking it out, to be hearing the sounds, and to be seeing them. Okay, that sort of stuff is really useful. Again, sticking with consonant, vowel, consonant sounds in the early stages. Now, as your child gets a little bit older, say they're in year 2, year 3, it's really important that they can tell what syllables are in the word. You know, like if I look at, say, a word like happy, well, happy is not one syllable. Happy is 2 syllables. And you need to teach your child to be able to break the word happy into H-A-P and P-Y, how that word sort of comes apart there. Happy. And a way of doing that with words that are longer than 1 syllable is to have them sort of clapping. So instead of just saying happy, how many syllables in happy, to actually clap it out with them and go happy. How many syllables? Happy. Happy. Yep, so as they're clapping it out, it just makes it easier for them to learn to break words into syllables. Now, that's sort of a good start, but that's not going to take you exactly where you need to go, because the next level after that is for kids to learn to use the letter E on the end of words. I mean, there's so many ways you could teach a child to read, but this is a really healthy way of doing it. So if I take the word fin, as in what's on a fish has a fin. If I take the word fin, it's got a short vowel sound for the I. It's I, okay, fin. But then if I add the letter E to the end of that word, it becomes fine. You know, it was fin, but fin plus an E is now fine. Okay, so the I sound is now turned into an I sound. And the deal is that the letter E on the end of a word makes a vowel say its own name, basically. So, and that's, you know, you can see that, fin to fine. The I's now saying I, it's saying its own name. Now, this is a really good thing for you to show your child and to really work with your child for quite a lot of regular time on, because, again, it's teaching your child that there's some sort of logic and some sort of order to the way that English works and the way that words work, and that, you know, you can add an E to a word and you can take an E off a word, and you can predictably work out what's going to happen there. So say with the word hat, okay, you want your child to know that that word hat, H-A-T, hat, is a stable word. It makes sense, hat. And then I put the E on the end and it makes it into the word heat, and that is predictable. And that rhymes with, say, mat and mate. You know, you want your child to see the predictability of it, because that's what's so often missing for kids with phonological dyslexia. And it's not just knowing that it has predictability, because that's not always going to make it easier for your child to do the actual decoding, the reading. But at least if they're struggling with the work, knowing that there is some logic to it is going to inspire them to give it their all and to not be someone who quits. Now, the next level for helping your child, and this is, you know, as they're getting a little bit older, we're not talking kindergarten, we're talking, you know, year 1, year 2, year 3, is to help your child understand prefixes and suffixes. So your prefixes being un, in, and miss. Things like misspelled, unhappy, you know, incompetent, you know. I don't think you'd be using that word with your kid, otherwise that would demonstrate some incompetence on our parts as teachers or parents. But you get what I'm saying. It's those little sounds at the start of words, because, again, it's teaching our child that words can be broken into pieces. So, say the word happy, okay? I can put unhappy, I can put un at the start and turn happy into unhappy, and then I can take the un off and it goes back to being happy. It's important for our child to play around with this sort of idea, and it's a good idea to use cards. So to have the word happy on a card, and then to get another little card that says un on it and put them side by side so your child can see, oh, it was happy, but with this card in front it's now unhappy. Okay, so particularly prefixes such as un or in or miss, you know, they're really straightforward, they're common, they're effective ways of showing kids how to get used to longer words, because they can, after a while, and it takes longer for someone with phonological dyslexia, but it can be done, after a while they get used to the idea that un, it will say un. So UN at the start of a word means that, yep, I'm safe, I can read that word, that's no worries. And then the other thing is to keep in mind the suffixes, the little bits that you put on the ends of words, like FUL, something like, say, hate, you put FUL on the end, it becomes hateful, or something like LY on the end of words, like sad with LY becomes sadly, quick with LY on the end becomes quickly. And again, to use those words and those word cards to get your child pulling words apart, putting them back together. And another good one is MENT, MENT. So as they're getting older, to know words like containment, contentment, because contain and content, they're words that your child's now able to read, and you're putting MENT on the end, MENT, and it just means that your child's really become accustomed to pulling words apart, putting them back together, and that's one of the main skills that kids with phonological dyslexia are lacking. And so by doing this sort of activity, you're actually hitting them at the point of their need. Now, as kids get older, it's good to focus more on compound words, and by that I mean where you've got two words joined into one. Words like sailboat, or heartbeat, or toothbrush, or toothpaste. Say the word toothpaste. It's actually two separate words, tooth and paste. You put them together, you got toothpaste. So the good thing about using these compound words, these longer words, is that your child is learning to read longer words, but in a way that still feels safe, because your child can read tooth, and your child after a while hopefully can read paste, and putting them together, they're seeing that the word comes in chunks. Okay, it's not one string of 10 letters, it's actually a couple of series of chunks of letters, and you can sound out the chunks and then you end up knowing the words. So yeah, never underestimate the value of compound words. They are just such, I don't know, they're sweet, they're good. And then from this point on, pretty much it's a matter of practice, practice, and more practice. And you want your practice to be intelligent and well planned and viable for the long term. You don't want your child practicing for an hour a day, because in 3 days' time, they're never going to want to practice with you again. They'd rather read to the dog than read to you, because they're just so cranky that you made them practice that long. So firstly, don't practice for too long. Secondly, practice in a way that is actually fun. So getting your child to reread a sentence or a paragraph is actually fairly motivating once they get into the habit of it, because the first time they're reading, they're just sort of understanding what the words say. The second time they're reading that paragraph, they sort of feel like, yeah, I can do this, and the third time they just feel like, yeah, this is easy. I'm a champion, I can do this reading. I've got this, So you want your child rereading. So do practice a lot. Make sure your practice is at sensible lengths of time, and also make sure your child is rereading words. It is purposeless to have your child reading a new book every day. It's just not what you want. Unless they're already in a great spot with their reading, in which case they don't need to be doing this activity with you. But your child should not be reading a different book every day. Your child should be reading the same book they read yesterday and a bit of a new book. And then tomorrow they read again the same book they read yesterday and then a little bit of something new, because you want that variety. And who cares if it takes your child a week to get through a book? Who cares? It doesn't matter. What matters is that they were reading the words and understanding it and getting used to reading and gradually improving their skills. Now, comprehension is everything when it comes to reading. So if your child is reading but not understanding, that's got to change. That is not a viable situation. I've seen it so many times. Kids with dyslexia who they can read, they sound like they're reading, but they're so focused on understanding what the words are, and they're so focused on trying to work out, how do I read this word, that they're not really grasping the meaning of the text. So a simple way around that is to have your child reread that section, but you just can't gloss over that. You can't act like that's not happening. You've got to go back and deal with it. And ask them questions about what they've read, but don't just ask questions like, oh, where did the bear go, when the bear went to the beach? Because it was obvious the bear went to the beach. Even the picture has a picture of the bear at the beach. But ask them things like, oh, what do you think the bear would be feeling like on the way to the beach? Oh, why do you think the bear went to the beach? Do you think it would be a good idea for other bears to go to the beach? Or other questions like that. So those sort of questions sort of cause your child to have to comprehend, and a big part of that's going to be in how you get them to reread what they've just read. Now, it's really healthy for kids to read alongside with an audio book. Now, I fear that if I explain this to you that you're going to go, yeah, what a great idea, and then never do it. I really hope you latch onto this one. It's healthy. You know, kids can have audio books, you know, books on CD or downloadable books that they read for them. And as your child is reading the words, they're never getting stuck because they're hearing the audiobook read to them. And it sort of is a lead-in to being able to read more difficult books. So whatever level your child is at, there'll be audiobooks for your child, and I would highly recommend getting hold of them and really encouraging your child to read them. If necessary, giving them, I don't know, some extra pocket money or some chocolate just to do the audiobook. And if they are doing the audiobook, then that means you don't have to be the one teaching your child, which is good, because at the end of the day, you also want to be a parent, not just the person who makes your child read. Now, for super excited kids about music, kids who just love their music, then it can be really effective to have your child reading lyrics to songs that they already half know. You don't want kids reading lyrics to songs that they completely know off the top of their head. You want kids reading songs that they're sort of vaguely familiar with, okay? And make sure that the lyrics are printed out large enough that your child can read them. You don't want the child reading the back of a CD cover. They can hardly read them, they're so small. But it is healthy for them to be reading those lyrics because the child's already interested and engaged in that, and the child is, you know, familiar with the sound of the tune. The child can sort of make the words fit the pattern that they vaguely remember the words going in the last time they heard the song. And so, yeah, obviously make sure your child's not listening to stuff that's just like junk food for their head. You know, so much of teenage music is just aimed at just, I don't know, teaching our kids values that don't line up with yours or mine. But so make sure they're reading lyrics to something that's worthwhile. But at the same time, I wouldn't gloss over this opportunity. It's a good opportunity. If you've got a kid who hates reading but loves music, you know, then there's your way into reading. Next step is to go and have a look at the videos on helping a child who has visual forms of dyslexia, like visual stress, scotopic sensitivity, Erlen syndrome, whatever you want to call it. Okay, those things, those videos are actually very relevant for you, even if your child has phonological dyslexia. Don't take too much notice of things like changing the colour of the page. Well, that's not relevant to you. We've already established that. But do take notice of the activities that I'm suggesting, because those activities, most of them are actually applicable to your child. And I think that you'll see that the variety there is useful to you, and you'll see that it sort of makes sense. You put this particular video together with those ones and it'll make sense to you, so have fun. So let's say that your child has phonological dyslexia and you want to know how to help your child to read well if they have phonological dyslexia. Now, there's some really key things you need to know, and